Hi, I'm John, and welcome to The Business of Being a Postgrad, the podcast where we share real stories, experiences, and insights from postgraduate students here at Durham University Business School. In this episode, we're joined by Mike, Program Director and Associate Dean for the MBAs. Together, we'll explore what makes Durham's MBA distinctive, how it prepares future leaders, and Mike's advice for anyone thinking about taking the next step in their career. First up, Mike tells us about his background, his role at Durham, and his experience leading the programs. Hi Mike, thank you for joining us today on The Business of Being a Postgrad. If you could just start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your role as the Associate Dean of our MBA programs, and what your work at Durham University Business School involves.
Hi John. As you say, several roles that I undertake here at the university. MBAs being a focal point of my roles for the last 5 or 6 years here. So I've been the Programme Director for our Executive MBA, which is delivered in collaboration with the European Business School. I've been the Programme Director for our online MBA, and now I'm the Programme Director for the full-time MBA as well. In addition to that, I have the overarching responsibility for the program directors on the other programs as well.
What drew you into kind of business education and leadership development?
Honestly, there's an element of serendipity, I suppose. If you'd have said to me 30 years ago that this is what I'd be doing and I'd be delivering leadership education, I would have laughed. Essentially, I fell into education because I wanted to travel. And when I finished my undergraduate degree, there was an opportunity to go and teach at a Swiss hotel management school. My first role in teaching was teaching effectively business communication. They called it business communications, but it was effectively business English to students from 65 different countries all over the world, which was an interesting experience.
When did you join Durham?
Joined Durham in 2016. So I spent 5 years in Switzerland. I spent 5 years in the Middle East, and I've worked at a couple of other UK institutions. 10 years at Durham now. In
addition to your role, obviously, you've mentioned as Associate Dean and Program Directors. Do you teach any specific modules?
My focus is in the marketing area. So I teach the full-time MBAs and the executive MBAs the marketing content.
Next, we'll explore the Durham MBAs, what makes them distinctive, and how students can tailor their experience. So here at Durham, we offer several different MBA study options, including the full-time MBA, online MBA, and some executive MBA programs. Could you give us an overview, with all of your experience, of the different programs and who they are designed for?
Yeah, I mean, if I speak generally, to start off with, the easy way of looking at the distinction between the programs is essentially the full-time program is coming and studying on a full-time basis. In Durham, it's a 12-month program. But so you're here surrounded by the program and the program events, and you kind of give yourself over to that for the full year. The executive and the online programs, unlike the full-time programmers, which tends to be people who are early managerial career, but probably around 30, 31 years of age. The executive and the part-time tend to attract people who are a bit further on in their life, with perhaps more family commitments, mortgage commitments, don't want to or can't necessarily excuse themselves from that life for 12 months. So they're essentially part-time programs, but delivered in different ways to appeal to different motivations, different desires in terms of what they want to get out of the program. So obviously with technology development, I mean we've been running our online MBA or remote MBA for a long time now.
I think Durham was one of the first to.
But when it started, it was almost like a mail order program. So we would send the materials out. Obviously, the development of technology, people's comfort with being online post-pandemic has really grown that market and that appeal to some extent, because I think there's a lot of things that you can do online and you can make materials accessible and they provide the opportunity to engage with people and a variety of people remotely. But there are a lot of things that aren't easily replicated, let's say, in a virtual environment. So to that end, if you're in that stage of your life where you can't give up your work, but you don't really feel like the online environment is something that will deliver what you want to get from the program, you have the executive programs So whether you do the full-time program, the online program, or the executive program, you come away with an MBA from Durham. It doesn't say online on there or executive on there. It's the same product, just delivered and packaged in a different way. But the executive MBA program is delivered in conjunction with the European Business School, who are just outside Frankfurt in Germany, and we share the delivery. Students doing that program come away with an MBA from Durham, and they come away with an MBA from the European Business School as well.
How long is that program delivered?
The executive MBA is 18 months.
And the online MBA?
And the online is 24 months. That being said, we know that life sometimes gets in the way, so there is an opportunity for
some flexibility.
Some flexibility in and some support through that program. So that's just a recognition of life happens. The benefit of the executive MBA program is that in-person delivery. So although it's 18 months, the delivery is condensed to short block weeks or half weeks, where you'll come to either Durham or to the European Business School, and you'll have your delivery, and then you go away, and then you come back several weeks later for the next one. So it gives a bit of an in-person experience, but without the same kind of commitment that's required for the full-time program.
Yeah, it's nice. There's lots of different options depending on what you want as an individual, how you best learn and interact with others. And as you mentioned, obviously, you learn from your peers in the cohort as well. So Absolutely. If you really want that experience, then executive or full-time is a good option, but you get that also on the online as well. You know.
Do. And I think, again, from the online perspective, if you're in deepest, darkest Peru, for example, and you can't necessarily make trips to Durham and or Germany for the executive experience, the online experience gives you that exposure. That being said, when you get to the elective stage of any of those programs, it's possible to, even on the online program, to come to Durham and have a face-to-face experience, or at least one face-to-face experience during the program delivery. And I think that helps with that engagement with the program. The other thing to say is Durham's a lovely city. I advise anybody that I speak to on the online program, you have to come at least once, just to experience it, just to visit the castle, the cathedral, and and a lot of people do take us up on that in terms of making sure they come and do one of the deliveries, or at least one of the deliveries.
And equally, EBS is a beautiful campus as well. I know I've been out there. You obviously teach out there as well. Beautiful campus and a great place to go and study as well.
It is, yeah. Both World Heritage sites. EBS is located just outside Frankfurt or Wiesbaden in a place called Ostrich-Winkel. They're long days when you're there, but we do fill them with a lot in terms of the delivery, but again, the experience that you're out there with it's not work.
We've been talking a little bit about the flexibility of the programs, specifically now talking about the online MBA and the full-time MBA. How important is it the ability for students to tailor their experience on the program through the different pathways that we offer?
It's not a one size fits all approach. I think we have people that come from different nationalities, different backgrounds, have different goals in terms of their careers and where they see themselves going. As I mentioned earlier, it could be that they want to move their career on to the next stage. It could be that they want to pivot into consultancy, for example, or start their own business. So from that perspective, a one size fits all approach wouldn't work. So we have to make sure that we cover the basics in terms of the key areas that an MBA should cover, and that basically boils down to business strategy, leadership, marketing, operations management, finance, accounting, those areas. So we have to make sure we cover those. On the full-time program, we try to fit as much of those areas as possible into the early stages of the program, so that everybody's got that same foundation. Again, we have people that will come onto the program who have never studied finance before in their lives, and then we'll have people who are actually working in finance, or from a first exposure to marketing to people that are working in marketing. The challenge, I suppose, for us is to bring everybody along and get everybody to the same level. So we want to have that solid foundation, that solid grounding, and then allow them to apply those in areas that are either of interest or that will set them up well for their future careers and where they see themselves. So we have on the online and the full-time programs, we have a number of electives that students will be able to choose. On the full-time, we call them concentrations. So essentially, there's 4 concentrations with 8 elective modules that are available to you to take. The concentrations are in the new ones in finance, there's one in technology, one in entrepreneurship, and one in consultancy. So yeah, there are electives that you'll choose under those banners, or you're able to choose under those banners to tailor your course to your desires. Similarly, for the online program, we don't call them concentrations on the online program, but you have the same choice.
Do you think it's important students should kind of should know what they want to do, what concentration they should go into when they start?
So I speak to applicants before they arrive, and frequently they will have an idea of the concentration that will suit them, or the one that they have their eye on. Or they might be debating between 2 options that they have. I do say to them that you don't have to decide now, before even arriving in Durham. We do ask to get an indication. I would suggest probably in the first couple of months when they arrive for the full-time program. But that's really to help us plan for numbers. And
so are they concentrations delivered in term 2 or term 3?
They're in term 3, which is typically around Easter time in the UK. They're slightly different deliveries. Well, they tend to be block taught. So rather than have 10 weeks of a subject area like you will do in the marketing, the accounting, the operations modules, you'll tend to have a week's delivery where we'll deliver masterclasses in that area. We'll have guest speakers that come and talk to you, but you deliver that in a 1-week block. But yeah, around the Easter time.
You've talked a little bit about AMBA accreditation today. Just want to dive into that a little bit more. Why is AMBA accreditation important for a prospective student thinking about doing an MBA?
There's a lot of answers. So I suppose the easiest way of looking at AMBA is that they are an independent body that evaluates and I suppose provides a degree of assurance over the fact that the program delivers what it should be delivering.
The quality of the program.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I did mention earlier there are lots of MBA programs out there. Our approach is one where we want to make sure that we're delivering what people expect. And AMBA and our rankings give that assurance to people that this is a good program. You'll have a good experience. The takeaways that you'll get meet kind of the requirements of industry and future careers. So it does. It's just a bit of a safety net in terms of making the right choice.
And what's something that you think really differentiates a Durham MBA experience?
Great question. We've been asked this question previously. I like to say that from a Durham perspective, you know that you're getting what you should get on the MBA program. But if I can give a kind of a personal flavour to the experience that you'll have here. When we were talking about my career progression earlier, I've moved around. I wouldn't say a lot, but a few times over my career. The longest that I've stayed in any one place is Durham. I've been at Durham 10 years now. Anywhere else, the longest I'd stayed was 4 or 5 years.
Same for me, to be honest.
and I think that speaks volumes about the environment that Durham creates. And I don't know whether it's to do with the collegiate system that we have at Durham, but I think that goes a long way to creating an environment that's inclusive, an environment that's collegiate, and overall a really positive experience. I can't speak highly enough of my time at Durham, and I think that bears fruit in the programs.
Now we discuss careers, leadership, and how the MBAs prepare graduates for the future of business. So we all know, Mike, that the business world is changing rapidly with developments in AI and digital transformation and changing workplace expectations. How is the Durham MBA programs preparing students to kind of lead and succeed in this evolving environment?
As you say, really dynamic area and an area that's got a lot of institutions, a lot of institutions offering MBA programs, questioning what the MBA of the future needs to include. The most obvious example of that is the impact of artificial intelligence. In my experience, the last couple of years, a lot of focus with regards to artificial intelligence in terms of the education has been focused on the extent to which people on the programs are using artificial intelligence to complete their assessments, and whether we can determine whether the work is theirs or not. And I think that's a valid point. We need to be able to distinguish the performance and the learning of the people on the programs. However, what's perhaps more important is going back to my earlier point of what is it that an MBA delivers, and it's not necessarily always the things that you expect it to deliver. The way I see the MBA evolving here at Durham and more broadly is a focus on developing the skills that the executives on the program will need to utilize AI in their jobs and to use it as an assistant to support them in making the decisions, because it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and it's pervasive as well. So rather than try and prevent people from using it, I think it's a requirement from our perspective to engage with that, to use it in the program in terms of how we deliver. There's a huge amount of opportunity that's afforded to us in terms of the use of artificial intelligence, in terms of helping to create business type simulations that will help decision making in the program itself. But it's on us to encourage the executives at the right time to use that and to develop that skill set. So I think that's a key area from a technology perspective. There are other areas to focus on, although I would say a lot of attention is being given to artificial intelligence at the moment, but areas around sustainability, for example.
Yeah, so on that sustainability, how is that embedded into the Durham MBA programs? Obviously, a lot of businesses now are kind of having to balance commercial success with environmental and social responsibility. How are we preparing students?
That list of topics that I mentioned earlier in terms of the key areas of focus that an MBA needs to cover, I didn't mention sustainability in that, not because it's not important, but because it perhaps has a slightly different role in that it needs to transcend all areas of business. So we have a policy, if you want to call it that, of ensuring that every module that we teach on the MBA programs has an element of sustainability, corporate social responsibility embedded into those modules. So we look at those principles from each angle or each area of business. In addition to that, we have a sustainability and ethics module which focuses explicitly on how we make good, because there's not a one correct answer in business in terms of how you make decisions and what informs your decisions. There's a multitude of answers. What we want to do is ensure that our graduates are aware of why they're making the decisions that they're decisions, and that they're able to make decisions for the right reasons, or for reasons that are for more than just the best decision on the bottom line. So kind of the principles of the triple bottom line in terms of people, society, and profits.
It's a very evolving subject, AI and sustainability, and the world we live in now changes so quickly. I guess it's really difficult to prepare students all the time for different eventualities and what's going to happen in a year's time in the world.
It is. And again, I think what I would say is going all the way back to what you think you're going to get from the program and what you actually get from the program are two very different things. Yes, we provide you with those foundations in business, but the skill sets that you get in terms of making decisions, in terms of being able to be evaluative, to be critical in your thought process, to lead people and bring them along with the decisions that you're taking are fundamental. And I suppose they're the enduring part of the MBA experience, because if I take my area, marketing has evolved an awful lot in the last 20, 30 years and will continue to evolve in the next 20 to 30 years. It's not necessarily the case that you need to be ahead of all of those developments or the evolution or revolution of those areas, but to be able to recognize when they're coming and be able to identify that you need to make a decision or you need to react to the changes is critical.
And what opportunities are there on the program for students to develop those leadership skills, get engaged with industries or guest speaker programs or the strategic consultant project?
Yeah, I like to think of the program kind of moving through several stages. So I think the first stage, when you arrive here in term one, I think there's a lot of learning about yourself. Now, that might sound quite obvious in terms of what I already know about myself and who I am, but knowing where your skills lie, knowing what your strengths are, perhaps knowing where your weaknesses are and where you want to develop. And I think you need to be aware of those in order to be in a position to work with others, work effectively with others, and also lead others and build that response. So the first stage, I suppose, is all about recognizing about yourself and your identity. Then the second stage, there's a lot more activities in term 2 that focus on group working. So we encourage you, some would say insist, that you working in groups and collaborate and expose yourself to the dynamics of not having to just manage yourself and your own strengths and weaknesses, but to recognize differences in others and afford the opportunity to develop the skill set to work effectively and manage that experience. And then I'd probably say the third stage in term 3, yes, you're doing your electives, but we have a module called the boardroom exercise, which is a live simulation of the types of interaction that you'll have with a C-suite or C-suite executives. It's a very demanding module in that you're placed in a situation where you have to learn an awful lot about an industry and an organization within that industry. You have non-executive directors that will come in and coach you through the process of developing a strategy and working within your team to come up with strategic asks that you'll then pitch to a simulated boardroom. And I say simulated boardroom, but we have people on board that are being brought from
in person.
Yeah, in person with real experience of the C-suite and the requirements. So then you have to try and pitch to your board members the strategic asks that you would like to achieve, and all being well, at the end they agree, but or they accept those and they are implemented, but that doesn't always materialize that way. It's not always the case that you go in and you say, well, this is what we think the direction of the company needs to be, and this is where we'd like to see us. It's not uncommon to come away from that with no, that's not really where we see our future lying, and go back to the drawing board. So it's an interesting experience. Like I say, it's condensed, it's slightly pressurized because that's the nature of a simulation. We want to simulate that type of environment.
We've had quite a few guests already on the podcast who have said, that was one that highlights they were looking forward to when they joined Durham.
It's fun. Again, when I do the interviews to potential applicants onto the program, you say to them, so why Durham? What interests you? And a lot of the time they say, oh, the boardroom exercise, that looks really appealing. I'm really interested in doing that. So they like the idea of it when before they arrive. And it's something, I suppose, to look forward to through the first couple of terms of the program. And just so happens that last week we finished this year's boardroom exercises. So the students on the program, they're all wandering around now, really quite happy and have loved the experience of being on the boardroom exercise and doing that. If you'd have been asking me about a week ago, it would have been, and them about a week ago, it would have been a completely different answer. I think it's timed
nicely that they've obviously been here for a majority of their experience so far, so they're getting to actually put those skills they're learning into practice, which full-time students don't always get to do unless they kind of run in their business, whereas online students or executive students can sometimes take what they've learned in the classroom that day, that week, and go into office next week and put that straight into practice.
Yeah, it's a great point to make in terms of the distinction, I suppose, between what we call the part-time programs or the full-time program on the executive and the online program. It's take what you learn from the program and apply it straight away. And if there's a weakness to a full-time program, it's that you're removed from that industry. So we know that, but there are ways around that in terms of the activities we ask you to do, in terms of bringing guest speakers into the university. The
International Business and Context module as well. It's another great opportunity for the full-time students to
absolutely
engage with companies in Europe.
Yeah. So Europe, the last couple of years that we've been doing it, but the focus on international business and context is, as you say, taking people out of this environment that they're in. A lot of them are already removed from their, let's say, their home environment, their home cultures, but then putting them into a different environment and learning about the different cultures and how people do business in those cultures. And hopefully, having lived and worked internationally, I can't speak highly enough of the impact that putting yourself in a completely new situation has on you and the way that you look at the world. And I think this is an approach that really bears out on the program too.
Yeah, 100% agree. I've lived across Australia, New Zealand, grew up in Germany. Again, that international experience. And I think all the students, whether you're doing an MBA or a master's, we've had on the podcast, have talked about, expanding that network and getting that kind of experience of meeting different people is just so valuable. And, you stay with it forever, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So just to kind of look back on some kind of successful MBA graduates, are there any common qualities or, mindsets from students you've taught that have gone on to really succeed?
The short answer is no, I suppose. I wouldn't say that there's one common or two or three common characteristics that you need to have to succeed on an MBA. I would say there's 3 to 4 common outcomes that you're looking to achieve, and the MBA is the route to getting that. So the commonality comes from the benefit that you're going to gain from the MBA. And we have people that want to start their own business or they want to pivot into a new career. And that's their motivation, that's their goal, and the MBA is a route to achieve that. And I think that adds to and creates an interesting dynamic to the program in and of itself, because you've got people that are contributing different viewpoints and different experiences, and that's a learning experience for the people that they're working with. So I wouldn't say there's definitely a skill set that you need or a requirement, but I think a clear goal in mind in terms of what the MBA will do for you is critical. So the motivation to pursue that as well.
How does Durham help those students whilst they're kind of on the program to develop those goals?
The way of looking at the role that Durham plays is about providing the opportunity for those students to open the doors. So I would say we facilitate. Yes, we provide the content that's going to support them, but we facilitate. We facilitate through our industry relations team. So we bring business representatives into the program and give students exposure to those. We facilitate through our alumni network, which is second to none, really.
I think we have over 4,000 MBA graduates across 98 different countries, so it's quite expansive.
It is, and they're so proud of their time at Durham, whether they're MBA graduates or not. They're all over the world. I'm told the first question that a Durham alumnus asks another Durham alumnus is, "What college did you belong to?" So there's automatically a sense of camaraderie, but also rivalry at the same time, which is interesting. But they're so proud to help and support people that have come through the Durham system. I tap into the alumni network, and I'm able to reach out to them, and they come back and they largely look to support me in what I want to deliver for the program. So I've had people come from Diageo, from Tommy Hilfiger, from Google, all to support the program, but based on the fact that I reached out to a Durham alumnus to support us.
Finally, we'll explore the application process, what makes a strong candidate, and Mike's advice for prospective students. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the application process and kind of making the most of your MBA once students are arriving here, Mike. So what type and level of professional experience are you looking for typically in applicants?
Again, it's a great question, and I feel like I'm not being very specific with a lot of the answers that I'm giving, and that's partly because there's not a typical or prototypical applicant that we'll see. We have applicants from all industries, all sectors, whether it's healthcare, education. We have people that are focusing on engineering. So there's no one type of applicant. I would say the biggest factor that will influence an applicant's success in terms of being accepted is the level of experience that they've had. So I've mentioned before that ideally we would like to see for the full-time program 3 years of managerial experience. For the executive program, it tends to be 3 to 5 years of experience. And for the online program, it tends to be about the same in terms of 3 to 5 years. So that's a key determinant of what will, I suppose, ultimately decide whether we look to pursue an applicant's application further, or whether they've met the requirements. But beyond that, I would go to what's your exposure to common expectations of people working in industry. So have you had any responsibility for managing people or looking after people in terms of direct reports or in terms of a project management, and kind of what have you taken away from that experience? Have you had any experience of managing budgets, and what are you taking away from that? So I suppose once you've overcome the first hurdle in terms of the level of experience that you've had, a big factor in terms of being able to sell yourself to the program and to the admissions team is how are you able to reflect on those experiences, and what have you taken away from those?
Yeah, so for our full-time MBA applicants would be required to obviously submit those documents initially to showcase those skills that you've just mentioned then, and then would move into, if they move forward in the application stage, would move to the interview round.
That's right.
And that's where they would be interviewed by an academic from the business school here, and you do some of those yourself, right?
I do, yeah.
When you're interviewing applicants, what are some of the qualities that really stand out to you in the strongest candidates?
We spend a lot of time thinking about or talking about their experience,
getting to know the applicant.
Exactly. I always do tell the applicants that yes, it's an interview, but it's a very informal interview. And there are no trick questions. We're never asking people how many golf balls they can fit into a Boeing 747 or anything along those lines.
It's very specific.
Yeah, you hear the stories of those sorts of questions that I suppose are there to try and determine whether somebody can work out how to come up with a reasonable answer, which is quite an interesting activity in and of itself. But we don't ask those sorts of questions. We spend a lot of time focusing on their background and their experience, because what we want to ensure is that we have a level of experience, but we want diversity on the program. So if you've been exposed to different areas of business, if you've been exposed to different responsibilities, or you've had different responsibilities, then that puts you in a good stead. But the second half of the interview tends to be focused on where do you see yourself in the future? How's the MBA going to help you achieve that? What are your long-term, your short-term goals? And again, it's not that we're looking for a specific response there in terms of, well, I see myself as being a corporate a CEO or for a Fortune 500 or anything along those lines. It's more have you thought this through? Is there a plan? Yeah, so I suppose they're kind of key factors that will determine a level of attractiveness. Yeah.
I suppose a lot of these candidates as well will have taken quite a bit of time out of academia, so it might have been a while since they've moved. They've been in a traditional academic environment, and now transitioning back into that as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the transition is a lot smoother than people think, at least in terms of the social aspects of the program. I'll often joke it's funny that how quickly people revert back to being kind of an undergraduate student and taking advantage of the environment that a university offers. And
which
again,
is definitely one of the perks of the full time. When you were mentioning before, obviously it's that they step away from the business, but they're stepping into that social opportunity, which that's the one of the positives.
It is, and as you rightly say, they've either been away from academia or at least producing reports or other piece of assessment for a long time, whether it's full time or online or even exec. We recognise that part of our role is helping you get back up to speed. You do see that people have very clear expectations in terms of what they think they should be getting out of the program, and we kind of have to manage that slightly, because ultimately, if you've got somebody that's extremely motivated and been working very hard developing their career for a number of years, they've decided that they want to come and do an MBA, they'll come into the MBA experience thinking, I want to get a distinction in my MBA, and they'll come through and let's take the marketing assessment, for example, and they get their first marketing assessment back and they get a 60 in their first marketing assessment. Now, a 60 to us, we have adjectives that we'll use to describe the level of performance, and to us we say a 60 is good. So I think perhaps one of the things to bear in mind if you're an international applicant is the UK grading scheme is very different. I mean, you still get a distinction or a merit or a pass, but how we calculate that's very, very different. But the reason I'm telling that story is because that's natural. If you've not been in that environment for a while, your ability to achieve is perhaps constrained by an unfamiliarity with the process or the requirement. Our process is building you up. So what we'll often see is a trajectory of grades. So we might see people start at around the 60% mark in their assessments, but with the right application, with the right engagement, will very quickly raise to the higher grades.
For anybody listening that's potentially joining us later in the year and joining our full-time MBA program, is there anything they can kind of do over the summer to kind of prepare for that transition back into academia?
I get asked this quite a lot. What reading should I prepare, and what reading? Again, there's no one correct answer. We do provide some guidelines in terms of some interesting books or interesting articles that you can read, but you won't arrive and have people say, have you read this book? Or you should have read this book. Here's an essay to write on it. That's not the case. My advice would really be to expose yourself more widely to the news, the current affairs that are affecting businesses, either through kind of mainstream media, or one area I particularly like is he says on a podcast is listening to podcasts around business. So there are several that I listen to on my journey to work or other times, that just sort of tell you this is how Coca-Cola started, and these are the challenges that they've faced, and this is where they are now. And I think just being aware of those sorts of challenges and having the exposure to them when you're then faced with a question that you're being asked in the economics module about the impact of a particular event on the growth of an organization, then you'll be able to draw on some of those that you've been exposed to. So I think allow yourself to be exposed to areas of business.
And Durham does a really great job of welcoming students and providing a nice orientation period for when they get here, for all the online students as well. Can you tell us briefly just about that kind of orientation, first couple of weeks, and what students should expect when they arrive?
Yeah, you're right with the online comment there, John. I think that's perhaps something to highlight. As I said earlier, I think there are some things in the online environment that are less easily replicable from the real world, if that's how you want to express it. But we do put an awful lot of effort into trying to create that real world experience in the online environment. So we do for both programs. We have a welcome and orientation week, and we have an interesting platform that we use for the online environment that allows you to mingle with your peers, which is a fantastic experience. It actually looks like a early 1990s video game when you're using it, which is great. I've
seen it. Yes, yeah. I know what you mean. Your reference is correct.
Yeah, it's a great experience, and it's a way of trying to replicate that first week experience, and that's a big part of the arrivals. Almost everybody has come from a different country on the program. We have diversity in terms of the student body. We do have some UK based applicants, but again, they're not normally from Durham. So everybody's in a new situation, in a new environment. So the Welcome and Orientation Week are normally focused on, yes, telling you what you need to know about Durham and what's expected in terms of accommodation and behaviour and these sorts of things, but more so focused on building that rapport, making people feel comfortable in the cohort that they have, because a big part of the MBA experience is the cohort experience.
What advice should you give somebody to get the most out of the MBA experience?
Mm-hmm. I'd say hit the ground running. We're just talking about what they need to do ahead of joining the program. Whilst I don't think there's anything specifically that we say you must do, I think when you start the program, you may have the view, somewhat a misconception, I suppose, that it's fairly light in terms of what the expectations are on you. And for the first few weeks, it probably is, but it doesn't take long for that to start increasing. And if you've allowed that to slip, you'll find yourself running to catch up with yourself very soon.
Great, thanks for sharing, Mike. Just before we wrap things up, I have to ask, because you've worked with MBA students for so many years, what continues to excite you the most about Durham's MBA programs and the impact it has on people's leadership journeys?
The interesting thing with regards MBAs in general is, whilst they're often seen as a pinnacle to some degree in terms of what you can achieve in terms of your business education and perhaps have that that perception of this is what an MBA looks like. The fact that they're not actually static, the fact that they do evolve with the requirements of business, means that we can't rest on our laurels, means that we need to look to incorporate new technologies. We need to incorporate new views and new requirements of what businesses in the 21st century and beyond require. So it's exciting to look at where it might take us.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share.